Welcome! Today, we're diving into the hidden force that literally soundtracks our lives, algorithmic fairness. We're going to peel back the curtain on music recommendation systems and explore how platforms, users, and artists all interact in this massive, invisible ecosystem. Let's get right into it.
I want you to really think about this for a second. When you fire up a playlist like Discover Weekly or let your app just roll into autoplay after an album finishes, how much of that discovery is actually your own objective choice? I mean, we all love to think of ourselves as independent music explorers, right? But the reality is, millions of personalized recommendations are being handed out every single day, driven by mathematical systems. And as we'll see, these systems are making value judgments on our behalf every second.
So, here is our roadmap for this explainer. We'll be looking at what researchers call the triad of fairness across three main stakeholders. First, are algorithms really neutral? Second, looking at users, mainstream and beyond. Third, artists, visibility and gender disparity. Fourth, how platforms strike a balance. And finally, the fair music ecosystem of the future.
All right, let's jump straight into section 1. Are algorithms really neutral?
Well, there's this huge illusion of objectivity when it comes to machine learning. We kind of tend to view code as pure, unbiased math. But algorithms are fundamentally shaped by human behavior. They're built and trained by people who carry their own intrinsic biases. On top of that, the historical data used to train these models is absolutely loaded with societal biases. So when an algorithm learns from a past behavior, it doesn't just passively reflect it. It actually has the potential to actively amplify those unfair outcomes, creating a feedback loop that disadvantages certain music genres or groups of people.
You can picture the core dynamic here like a giant bow tie. On one side, you have the artist creating the music. On the other side, you have the fans consuming it. And right in the middle, playing the ultimate matchmaker, is the recommendation system. This is exactly where the central conflict in algorithmic fairness lies. What feels like a fair and accurate recommendation for a fan might not equal fair visibility for an artist. A platform's mission is to help millions of creators make a living while simultaneously giving billions of fans exactly what they want to hear. But balancing those two massive funnels through one tiny algorithmic bottleneck, that is incredibly tough.
Moving on to section 2, users, mainstream and beyond. Let's see how this plays out when we focus on you, the listener.
Think about your own listening habits for a moment. Are you generally jamming to the biggest popular hits, or are you digging deep into underground niche scenes? Research reveals a fascinating divide when it comes to user fairness. For mainstream users who lean toward popular hits, the algorithm accuracy of these algorithms is actually super high. The system totally gets you. But for beyond mainstream users, the folks who prefer niche, alternative, or less popular tracks, that accuracy drops significantly. Because the algorithm relies so heavily on popularity metrics to figure out what makes a good song, niche listeners usually get a much less accurate experience. In a way, the system is literally biased against unique, offbeat taste.
Now let's flip the script. Section 3, artists, visibility and gender disparity. I want you to vividly imagine you're an indie artist fighting for visibility on a massive streaming platform. 23%. If you are a solo female artist, that number is a massive hurdle. That's the percentage of solo female artists found in common datasets used for music recommendation research. This number doesn't just reflect real-world industry barriers, it becomes a structural disadvantage the moment it gets baked into the historical data that trains the algorithm.
It's fascinating to see how the algorithm handles this historical bias. You might assume the machine just makes it worse, but the data paints a slightly different picture. In organic streaming, where a user specifically searches for a song or plays it from their library, female and multi-gender representation sits at 21.75%. But when we shift to program streaming, where the algorithm takes the wheel, that representation actually bumps up a little bit to 23.55%. So program streams do provide us tiny bump in visibility for minority genders compared to our own organic human choices, but even with that slight algorithmic nudge, there is still a glaring, massive gap.
When researchers sat down with artists to ask what a fair system should actually look like, the demands were crystal clear. First, they want systemic improvements in gender representation. Second, they need platforms to mitigate popularity bias. There's this technical phenomenon in machine learning called hubness. Basically, a few incredibly popular tracks become artificially linked to tons of other tracks in the database, monopolizing recommendations just because they're popular, not because they actually sound similar. And finally, artists want better representation for genres that sit way outside the mainstream. They want a system where quality, not just existing hype, drives discovery. Which brings us to the third stakeholder in our triad. Section 4, platforms. How do they strike a balance? Imagine you're the platform engineer. You've got users demanding instant, high-quality hits on one side and artists demanding fair visibility on the other. How do you program a machine to satisfy both?
The answer lies in some incredibly sophisticated and maybe slightly cold math. Meet BART. It stands for Bandits for Recommendations as Treatments. This is the machine learning engine that organizes spaces like Spotify's home screen. BART isn't just a simple ranking tool. It's a dynamic system that constantly evaluates how you react to content while simultaneously trying to personalize it.
The real kicker here is how this algorithm physically organizes what you see on your screen. Every time you open the app, the platform has to make two huge decisions. First, what goes inside individual playlists, which they call cards, and second, how do they order the shelves? Does Discover Weekly sit at the very top today, or does Recently Played take priority? Batid uses your historical data to arrange these shelves to maximize your engagement, creating the path of least resistance to a satisfying listening session.
But to balance the needs of both the user and the artist, BART has to navigate what engineers call the explore versus exploit dilemma. Honestly, thinking of it like a giant octopus is a great way to understand it. The exploit phase is the algorithm pulling a lever it knows will pay off. It recommends a guaranteed popular track it is mathematically certain you will click. That's great for you, but terrible for new artists. On the flip side, explore is the algorithm taking a calculated risk. It'll toss a brand new, unknown indie artist your way just to see how you react. It risks you skipping the song, but it gives that artist a vital shot at discovery.
To manage this risk, the algorithm actually treats artists differently based on where they are in their careers. For established artists, the system uses collaborative filtering. It looks at the listening history of millions of users, matches overlapping tastes, and predicts success based on massive amounts of behavioral data. But for a brand new artist with 0 listeners, collaborative filtering is useless. There's no history. So the system leans heavily on audio feature analysis. It literally analyzes the raw audio, the pitch, tempo, instrumentation, and structural familiarity. That audio analysis is what gets a new artist into the explore phase, but whether they stay in the recommendation pool depends entirely on actual engagement data. Do listeners save the track, skip it, or let it play through?
All right, we've seen the biases, the artist demands, and the platform's crazy balancing act. Let's wrap it up with Section 5, the fair music ecosystem of the future.
The most exciting takeaway from all this research is that fairness does not have to be a zero-sum game. Through a concept called multi-stakeholder optimization, platforms can actually make it a win-win. Studies show that making slight algorithmic tweaks to give artists a fair shake, like boosting minority genders or surfacing niche genres, absolutely does not ruin user satisfaction. In fact, by using cleverly designed persuasive strategies, platforms can support new and less popular artists while keeping listeners highly engaged. Ultimately, this creates a richer, more diverse ecosystem for all of us. Quality always wins out, and optimizing for fairness actually enhances the thrill of discovery.
I'm going to leave you with one final thought. Next time you put your headphones on and let a platform guide your listening, ask yourself, what hidden math is shaping your next playlist? Is it exploiting your past, exploring a new artist's future, or finally striking that perfect, fair balance? The soundtrack to your day is a constantly evolving negotiation between your habits and artist streams and millions of lines of code.